Welcome everyone. Welcome to the Heist and SQL Mystery. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to let folks trickle on in the next few moments, but in that time, which some folks may know what I'm coming with next, is can you see and hear me? Just want to make sure that our communication is straight. Just leave a comment in the chat, which, by the way, is our main way of communication. You just drop whatever in the chat and we will have a response for that. So just for now, just let me know if you can see or hear me. It's important just so that I know I'm all set up right here and I'm just not talking in vain. Awesome. Getting some responses. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So once again, thank you so much, now that I'm clear that you're seeing and hearing me, for joining the Heist and SQL Mystery. We're going to get into it here, and I'll give a couple more moments, but we're going to get into things. So I know this is, it's going to be about 30 minutes or so. We're going to spend the time here, but stick around if you can, because there are some awesome giveaways only at the end, though. That's for the folks who went the distance. So stick around if you can at the end, and we'll have some great gifts for you. Okay, great. Let us jump into things. So once again, welcome to the Heist and SQL Mystery. And this particular lesson came about from you, actually, when we asked, hey, would you prefer to learn SQL the traditional way, or would you like to have it in a gamified version? And an overwhelming yes to the gamified version has produced what you see in front of you, which is this, the Heist and SQL Mystery. Okay. So in the next 30 to 45 minutes or so, I'm going to cover a short introduction about myself. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this heist and the scene, and set the scene a bit. And we are going to get practical. Again, as I often like to do in these streams, I don't like to bore your ear off with me talking. We're going to make it a little bit of a workshop and get our first SQL queries written. And at the end, we're going to have a segment where you can ask questions, and that medium will be through the comments. Okay, so that's the game plan. Let's get into things. So who's talking to you? Who am I? Who's this guy? Well, my name is Walter Shields, to be proper. But I am best known for being a data analytics subject matter expert. I'm also an Amazon best-selling author with my book, SQL Quick Start Guide. I'm also partnering with Microsoft Learn and LinkedIn Learning, producing courses and materials in data analytics, SQL, Excel, and Power BI. I've got about 2 decades in the space here, not meaning to date myself, but I've been around for a little while in this space. Okay, so that is a little bit about me. What I'd like to do here, just pop on here, is know a little bit more about you. Okay, so again, with the chat, and I have some buckets of folks that will help me tailor this stream to who's mostly in the room. So can you just put a B, C, or D in the chat to the one that most aligns with you? A, if you're a beginner with absolutely no experience, you're in the right place. Come on in. B, if you want a career as a data analyst, just heard the buzzwords, know that it's actually a really lucrative career, and you want to know a little bit more about it, you're in the right place. If you're a professional just looking to skill up, you're probably a developer or a marketer or business analyst, and you heard that if you add SQL to your current skill set, you're going to give yourself an advantage. You are right in that thought, and you're in the right place. And lastly, if you want to be better prepared for our data-driven future, you just want to be aware of what it is of the world we live in right now. Great. Thank you so much. I see a lot of responses. Awesome. I see a lot of A's, B's, C's, sort of rounded. Okay. Okay, awesome. This is really helpful, folks. Thank you so much. That really gets me to know you a little bit more. Okay, all right. So now that I know you and now that I have a good sense of who's in the room, let's get further into things. Okay, all right. As I mentioned, you are here for a number of different reasons, and you might just want to know a little bit more. So let me give you a few facts to let you know that looking at data analytics is a viable thing to do with regard to where it's projected. Firstly, LinkedIn Learning has listed SQL as the top skill to future proof your career. And that's really important to keep abreast of the ever changing skills that you need to actually stay competitive. And SQL is certainly one of them. Data analytics is the most in demand role in 2022, this year, right? And this is a monster trend report that this information has come from. Also, growth is expected, right? We have data analytics being projected to grow to 132.9 billion by 2026. That's 4 short years. So now is a really great time to get involved, get knowledgeable, get skilled up on SQL. Okay. All right. That's why it's important to know. And just briefly, we hear a lot of buzzwords, data analytics, SQL. But what is the order of things? So, really briefly, data analytics has a number of components within it. And these three core skills are the ones that you are going to associate most with when you're thinking of yourself as a data analyst. Number one is Excel. Lots of people have experience in Excel, and I tell folks if you're looking to gain more knowledge in this field and you have some Excel experience, that's a great place to start. Excel is going to be learned as a data analyst would use the tool, and that is learning specific functions like index, like match, learning to use them together, pivot tables, and also learning to create things like models. So you learn Excel, but in a specific way that you would actually learn to operate it as a data analyst. Then SQL, which is what we're going to get into here and learn about how it could actually be a fun thing to learn. And the last but not least is data visualization, right? Data visualization is a really important piece because in both the cases of Excel and SQL, your end result or your output is usually rows and columns. Data visualization gives you that visual piece, right? It takes those same rows and columns and allow you to get even more insightful by projecting that as graphs and charts. Okay. So that's in a nutshell the three core skills that you need to be a data analyst. This segment here, we're focusing on SQL. Okay. So what is it? What is SQL exactly? So let's imagine a scenario. If you are familiar with Twitter, if you're familiar with Instagram, Facebook, your usual social media channels, when you post on those platforms, where does this data go? Well, let's take Instagram. You post a picture, that picture is going to end up all the way in a database. And that's this diagram on your leftmost part of the screen that you see here. The database is that collection area. All the data, all your posts, all your feeds, all your likes go into a database. Then it's pretty useless until you start making some analytical discoveries about the data that you've collected. How do you do this? Well, the tool that you use to communicate with data that's stored in a database is SQL. And that's short for a structured query language. And that's what we're going to get into here in this segment and learn how easy it is to start querying and looking at data that you've collected in a database. So that little middle area in your screen there, probably a little tight to see, but we'll get into a little more practice of it here in a little bit. But that's what's called SQL. It's composed of a number of different areas, but you apply that against your database, and to the right, which is the last diagram all the way to your right of your screen, you get rows and columns, which is what I meant about that output, right? you intelligently query the data that you've collected, and then you output it in rows and columns. So, for instance, how many Instagram posts did you do in the last 6 months? That's a question that SQL can certainly answer by querying the data that you've stored. Okay. All right. Now, let's get started, right? Let's get into what it is that we came here to do. Okay. So, we're here to solve a crime, right? We're going to learn a little bit about SQL, but our main purpose for doing that is actually solving a crime. So what is this crime? Okay. Well, let me break down the scene for a bit for you. On October 23rd, in the year of 2014, the Mona Lisa painting was stolen from the museum in Paris. To date, there have been no leads. The painting is still missing, and there's no trace of the thieves. You are working for the CIA, and you need to find out who is responsible for the crime. You've been granted special access to a classified data file of international companies and states, registers of residence, mobile phone text messages, and banking data. Using these resources, your mission is to use your data analysis skills and find who stole the painting. So that's the plot. That's the backdrop. Okay. That's what we're after. So at this point, we're going to segue a bit into the doing part. Remember, I mentioned I'm going to be talking, but there's going to be some doing. Okay. So if you want, during this segment or after, what you can do to get to the lesson is navigate to the link that I have displayed on the screen there, waltershields.com/the heist. In the screen in front of you here, I'm not going to jump into every single section for this segment, but just quickly walk over. So if you do this on your own, you know where to go. So if you haven't created an account, when you go to waltershields.com, that's the first thing you want to do. Just create an account. It's absolutely free. And once you navigate to this link and you're logged in, you're going to be presented with this screen. Start, introduction, SQL basics. Those three areas, I'm not going to touch on this segment here, but you should definitely not skip that if you plan on going and getting your feet wet with SQL, especially if you haven't done it before. Okay. What I am going to do is jump into the heist itself and see how we could start responding to some of these questions. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen here for 1 sec. So give me 1 second. It's going to look a little weird for you, but that's just for a little while. So here, once you navigate to the heist, I am going to go down to this segment here, which is the actual heist itself. As I mentioned, there are three areas once you get into the lesson itself, which tells you a little bit more of the basics of SQL. And again, you shouldn't skip that area. But once you get into the heist of itself, you can start to see some of the questions that we're about to tackle. Okay. All right. Let me just pause for a sec before we jump into things and ask, how's everybody doing? How are you all doing? Drop a line in the chat. So far, we're just warming up a bit, talking about SQL. And by the way, before I go any further and you tell me a little bit more about how you're doing, I'm in Miami right now, and actually right outside, I'm looking at the hurricane that's predicted to be hitting our area yesterday, today, tomorrow. Not too bad, but tell me as well, where are you tuning in from, right? I'm always interested to know, where you're coming in from, right? Let me know what's happening in your neck of the woods. Are you facing a hurricane as well? Just drop some lines in the chat. Okay. All right. So once you navigate to this area here, you'll see that we started the lesson. Let me scroll to the top. So the heist, this is the area that I just read. This is the plot on October 23rd, 2014, the Mona Lisa was stolen. And we want to just go sequentially down. I'm going to jump down to this area, how to find the thief, which is the main thing we're trying to do. That's our objective in our quest here. So there's 3 steps you want to take in your approach to finding the thief. First, you want to find out who was in Paris at that time. Because think about it. If a crime has taken place, where did this crime take place? So we want to zero in our focus on the scene of the crime, which is in Paris. Then we want to analyze the data and discover clues about who the thieves might be. And we're going to step through these questions to see how we might do that. Okay. And third, we are going to identify the thieves and the mastermind who planned this plot. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to just step through 1 or 2 of these questions. Definitely going to get our feet wet with just constructing a SQL statement in response to a question. But after that, I'm going to segue to some more question and answer segments, as well as let you know how you could continue this on your own. Okay. All right. So let's go down to this. Now that we know our plot, our first thing is when we look at this at our system tables, what table could contain the information regarding traveling? Now, what I have already done, and I'm going to just pop this up here, is set up my environment here with my files. Okay. So in the back here, this is called a DB browser for SQLite. It's the database software that we'll be using. And I'm going to load up the actual database that we need. Okay. So if I load this up, I have 6 tables. So very quickly, and this is covered in the lesson, here's your approach. You have this digital evidence file, this file that has been given to you as a data analyst to start analyzing. So now you as an expert, you have to get your tools. You need the file, you need the software. The software that we're using is this interface here called DB Browser for SQLite. The first thing I did was click on Open Database, and I navigated to that file, and I opened the database. And what's in front of me is the contents of that database. High level, I could see, all right, there are 6 tables in here, the names of those tables, and to the left of each table, I can expand and see what each table contains in terms of the fields. Okay. Now, let us just have the question here at the top. Looking at the tables, what table could contain information regarding traveling? So our first step is to just take a look at the table names. There's bank accounts, bank transactions, cell phone details, customer details, flight details, and text messages. So if you want travel information out of all of the tables that are here, the most clued in one, as far as the name, is flight details. So when I click on that and I expand that table, I could now take a look at the contents of the fields, right? I see there an ID field, customer ID field, start city, destination city, and flight date. I'm doing all of this in this database structure tab here. So quite a lot of information I've already figured out. And I've already gotten the answer to this question. What table could contain information regarding the flight? At least I think I'm warm on the question. How do I make sure, right? So now I'm going to leave this database structure area and go to the browse data. I'm going to look at that flight table again by going to this tables drop down and finding that flight details. This view allows me to now not look at the structure, which is what the table was made up of, but what's actually contained within this table. And upon looking at some of the records, I can see there's a customer ID, what's inside the start city. It looks like flight information. So this flight seems to have taken place from this city and ended up in this city and was taken by this customer. Okay. So without understanding everything, at least I could clue myself in and say, hey, you know what? I'm pretty sure that the flight details table is the table that contains traveling information. Okay? All right. So that's question 13 up here. Question 14. Get an idea of what kind of information is stored in the table with traveling location information, right? And have a hint. One hint is to have a look at the actual data. And I've actually just answered that question as well by going to the browse data. So question 1 is kind of telling you, hey, check out the structure of this table, of this database. Look at how many tables are in there. What's the structure of it? What's inside of these tables? And then browse data allows you to now go within and tell you what's the actual data that's stored in there. And by just having a look, both question 13 and 14, I have a good answer for that. All right. This is the last question I'm going to do in this segment before segueing back to some questions and answers. But we couldn't do a segue like this without doing some actual SQL. Okay. So let's go to the Execute SQL tab, okay? And we want to look at the question. Get the name of all persons who live in Paris. How do we even start to answer this question? Well, let's go to the Database Structure tab again. Let's look at the question carefully. Get the list of names, okay? So that tells you what's required. You want a name, a table that actually houses names of all the people who live in Paris. So again, if we were to look at our tables here, bank accounts, bank transactions, cell phone details, customer details, maybe customers are people, okay? Let's expand this table. Within there, we see there are a few different fields, an ID field, first name, city, age, and last name, okay? Now, just as we did before, because we're now clued into the table that we most likely think we'll find that data in, let's go to our Browse Data tab once again and take a look at this same table, the Customer Details table. Now I go to Browse Data, I go to my flight dropdown, and I select Customer Details. And now I could see what's stored within this table. First name, last name, city, and age. Okay, first name, last name, city, age. So here I can tell, like, this information that I'm after is most likely stored in this customer details table. With that, let's construct our first SQL statement. Now we need to say, now that we've identified it's the customer details table, let's start with the from clause. The from clause is basically like the pointer. It's going to tell us where to look. Out of all of the tables in the database, where do we look? So we say from customer details. I'm going to pause for a quick sec. You see this little pop-up here? It's already popped up something that it thinks that I mean. And this little pop-up is referred to as IntelliSense. IntelliSense is there to save us typing. So it suggests customer details or customer ID. I'm after the customer details. I click on that table, and there we go. So from customer details effectively tells us, okay, go look in the customer details table. So now that we're there, now what? Let's revisit that question again. Get the name of all the persons who live in Paris, right? So you don't want everyone in there. You want only the people who live in Paris. So how do I cut down the records to only focus on the folks that live in Paris? If I look at the database structure again, go back to that customer details, and I could tell there's a city field. When I go to that browse data tab, I could tell cities are in there. Paris is a city, okay? So now let's go back to the execute SQL, and I could continue under the from clause with a where clause and say where city is equal to Paris. Pause a quick second there. Let me spell Paris the right way. Okay, so what have I done here? I've said, hey, let's go to that customer details table. Now, in looking at the question, I don't want everyone, every single customer, only the persons that live in Paris. So this where city equal Paris effectively tells me that I'm now pointing directly to only the subset of data that satisfies where the city is equal to Paris. Last but not least, I want a list of names, right? So I go up above and I say select, enter the select clause, right? So now I need to know, what do I need to select? If I go back once again, remind myself of this table once again, customer details. You want a list of persons who live in Paris, right? So let us take a look at that. A list of people would mean people have names. How do you identify people? Give them the name, the first name, the last name, and possibly the city, because that's the question. I want all of the people who lived in Paris. So now let's go back again to execute. I can now select some columns from the customer details table, like first name. I'm going to say comma. When I put a comma, I'm telling SQL, get ready for another column, which is last name. And we'll pop the city in there, right? Okay, that looks like a complete SQL statement. I'm going to click this little button up here which says run. And let's get here. We have 0 rows return. However, let me just do this. If I do like, and I do a % after the P, what does this do? This effectively gets me all the records that are whose city starts with P. Okay, so here I have all the records whose cities start with P, and I apparently do not have a Paris in there, but this SQL statement effectively gives me the answer to the question. Let me just slide on down here a little again. So get all the name of the people who's getting all the names of persons who live in Paris. So here we have the response to that. Okay, so I'm going to pause once again. Let me segue back again and find out how we're doing. Okay, I'm going to look a little strange in this StreamYard, but give me a sec. I'm going to stop sharing. All right, I want to pause for a quick sec here and ask, how are we doing? I know we went through a bit of things there. We went through a bit of questions and we went back and forth. But how are we doing? Drop a line in the chat. Let me know. Let me know how you're doing. Okay, awesome. I see. Okay. Awesome. Well, this is really fantastic. Let me jump back here. And I will just remind you again, if you are new to this, please don't skip the start all the way to SQL basics. Okay, just go from start, go to the introduction, go to SQL basics, and that's going to really give you some some foundations to start answering the questions as we did. Okay, all right, awesome. Okay, so what I'd like to do is let you know that I'd like to follow up with some office hours, right? So I know this is a live stream. Let me just jump on the screen here. This is a live stream, and you're not expected to all of a sudden grapple with everything or even do any of this right now. But in the interest of really supporting whatever your path is to learning SQL, I will make myself available in a follow-up segment. So please do look out for when we announce this. You'll have an office hour segment completely dedicated to responding to the heist and the questions that you may encounter while you actually pursue this lesson here. Okay, so Definitely try it. It won't be in vain. I'm going to follow up and we can get anything that's unclear clear. Okay. All right. As promised, this is a segment where I'm going to pause and allow you to ask me any question, right? Please take advantage of this segment. Ask me any question that you may have about the heist, about SQL, about data analytics, just about navigating. I'm going to leave a few minutes here to do that. And then we are going to get into, as I promised, some giveaways after the Q&A segment here. Okay. So if you have any questions, now is a fantastic time to ask. I'm going to be on the lookout for the chat here, and just let me know. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Okay. Awesome. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anybody's questions before. Great. Great. Thanks, Ankit. Thanks, Ankit. Thanks. Awesome. Awesome. Jacqueline, I see you. Thanks. Thanks. That's the whole idea. By the way, folks, like I'm really moved by this thing because too often in SQL and in tech in general, it's really sort of a cool thing. I don't know if people think it's cool to sound complicated, right? To sound overly complicated. And I don't think that's cool at all. I think a lot of what we're doing here really isn't. It's really simplified. And I really want to make sure that you understand these things and not understand a brand new, big, complicated word. You really need just to understand the simplicity of how this is done, because it is simple. And once you get it, you'll be that much more effective at whatever you do. The cool thing with SQL, it touches on every single industry. So whether you're in health, whether you're in marketing, whether you are a business analyst or straight up IT, you are going to be that much more powerful with the skill of SQL and data analytics in your field. Okay. All right, let me see. Questions. Okay, is your SQL book still up to date, relevant now? That's a great question. It is up to date, is very relevant. One of the things with SQL is it predates me, right? It's pretty old. It's I think it was invented somewhere in the 70s, somewhere around there. So as far as it being, and that's a really good point, because it is a language that stays relevant through the time. When you compare that to like C or VB or a lot of these other .NET or other programming languages, they definitely evolve. And when you look at SQL from Oracle to Microsoft SQL, for instance, there are slight differences. But in terms of the core of what gets you to analyze and understand any data set, SQL is pretty much unchanged, which is another great reason to learn it, right? Because there's a plethora of supporting material out there for it. That's a really good question. Really good question. All right. Okay, I'm going to segue at this point. If there are no more questions, if there are, please feel free. By the way, we always circle back, and even if we don't get to the questions that we can answer during this segment, I will certainly circle back and get them answered either in the comments, or I'll just hit you up in your inbox on LinkedIn. Which reminds me, please don't be shy. Friend me up on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to respond. Lots of people have already contacted me about questions about the book or SQL or something in the data realm. I'm always happy. I'm always available for that. So please do not hesitate to connect with me. All right. Tables as in column ends remain the same. Okay, not sure. Venkatesh, definitely elaborate on that question. I'll be happy to help if you have a little more clearer question, but I'll be happy to do that. What's your favorite application of SQL in your professional life, and which platform do you recommend to start with? That's a really good question. I think, in my own personal history of working with SQL, I've worked with a number of different industries, but I think the most interesting industry for me is what I've been working with recently, which is nonprofit data. It's just a whole new world. I guess I've been working with a lot of for-profit agencies, and recently I've done some nonprofit work that really has helped me to have a new appreciation for the industry of things. So working with that segment of data has been, I guess, the most rewarding. What I think is really helpful too is to see beyond the SQL, and by that I mean understand the organization that you're working with, what difference they're making in the world, and what part you have to play in that difference, right? That really helps to know, to give you purpose in what you're doing, right? That's a really great question. I know. Oh yeah, which platform? That was the second part of your question. So I think that the platform that we're working on right now, called SQLite, is really flexible and robust, meaning that you can easily install it on a Windows machine, on a Mac machine. But when it comes to enterprise level database systems, the one that I can't say that I prefer it. It's just been there in many organizations, but Microsoft SQL Server has been pretty much the predominant relational database management system in organizations I've worked at before. Okay. All right. I'm going to answer one more question. And by the way, that was an excellent question. Let me see. Ankit, I'm having an issue understanding SQL joins. Could you suggest a pragmatic approach to understanding that topic? I would say, and that again, really good question. Joins was my struggle point when I was first learning this thing. I mean, I would say it's probably that conceptually, if you first enter it, it's like, what are they even talking about? So I don't think there is one approach over a next in terms of the theory. What I think for me has worked has been the practice of it, right? Taking two tables that I'm familiar with and applying the join without even understanding it, applying an inner join. So that's one type of join. That's where you join tables and that have rows that match in both tables. Just take a query, even copy it, write that inner join out, and look at the results. Then change that inner join to a left, which is just changing that left, and then look at those results. And then change that left to a right, and then look at those results. And you're going to have to do this a few times with tables that you are familiar with. And just start with a few records. Start with a table that has maybe 4 or 5 records. So you're joining two tables with very minimal records so that in your head it makes sense. Oh, when I do an inner join, these records appear. Or when I do a left join, these other records appear. Okay, so that would be my most, my best advice for learning inner joins. And the other thing is reach out, right? No matter how much you might do in practice with your head down, reach out to folks like myself who will be more than happy to say, hey, well, here's an approach, or here's how you can tackle this particular question. Okay, great question. Great question. If there are more, I'll try to circle back at the end, but I'm going to go forward so that you get your gifts, right? I don't want to eat up the time here and not get to the gift giving section. All right. Okay. So to get the gifts going, we got some cool things lined up for you. And we have 24-hour free access to the top 5 things to know in SQL. What is that? Well, the top 5 things to know in SQL is my LinkedIn Learning course that is available right now on the LinkedIn Learning platform. If you navigate to that course, you will have 24 hours access free to it. Okay, that is my gift to you. The other thing that I'm going to do and by the way, that's for everyone in the room right now. Everyone has 24-hour free access to the top 5 things to know in SQL. This course is based around, and to answer that a question that was asked earlier, Microsoft SQL Server. I think it's important to learn that version of a relational database management system simply because most companies adopt and use it. Okay. All right. Your other big gift, and this is for just one lucky person. I'm going to segue again and do a little quick raffle for that. But I'm going to give 3 free months of premium LinkedIn learning access. Now, this is actually a really powerful gift. I think you'll be very happy with the amount of insight that LinkedIn Learning Premium gives you. You get to in-mail a lot of folks. You get to see a lot of statistics about your profile that you don't normally get to do without LinkedIn Premium. All right. To do this, it's going to be applied to one lucky person. I'm going to share my screen and let you know how to do that in 1 second here. Okay. It's going to look a little weird as I share. And I'm going to jump over here. Okay. What I'd like you to do right now in the chat is to type in the hashtag that you see. Hashtag data no doubt. Hashtag data no doubt in the chat right now. That enters you for a chance to win, the LinkedIn Learning Premium. Okay, so just go to your chat right now, enter hashtag data no doubt, and I am going to run the draw as soon as I see some entries in there. Okay, I see we got 1 entry so far, hashtag data no doubt in the chat. Okay, I see some folks are coming on in. Remember, the more folks that enter, more you give yourself your chance to win. By the way, it really is awesome. I actually started using Premium a few months ago, and it's been a really great thing for me. Okay, got to see a lot of insights that I didn't see before. So far, so good. Keep on rolling in. So far, we got a few entries. Got about 10 folks so far. Who's going to be anybody else? All right. I think that's about it. Let's draw this now. I'm going to hit the draw. Let's see who's going to be the lucky winner. There we have it. Jacqueline Taggart. Hope I spelt or pronounced your name the right way, but Jacqueline Taggart, you are the lucky winner of LinkedIn Learning Premium. Please just message me if we're on LinkedIn, and I'll walk you through exactly how you get access to that. Okay. So Jacqueline Taggart, congratulations. You are the lucky winner. You have earned yourself 3 free months of LinkedIn Learning Premium. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to jump back over here now. Okay, folks. With that, we have come to the end. So if you are looking for places where you can find my material, here are a few places that you can get my best-selling book, my LinkedIn Learning courses, and which is a really cool partnership now with Maven.com, my live cohort-based class on SQL, which is going to take you from zero to SQL hero in 2 weeks. So, folks, it has been an absolute honor. It has been my pleasure to have you with these few minutes here, walk you through the Heist, which was inspired completely and totally by you. And I appreciate your time because, as we know, you could be anywhere else, but you chose to be here. I appreciate and I respect that a lot. I want to tip my hat to you for investing in yourself. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer any questions on data analytics, SQL, Excel, Power BI, or anything of the sort. Okay. Thank you so much again. We will be here again next week with another live stream, and talk to you soon.